Thank you all very much for joining us today. My dear alumni, I am Julia Khrebtan-Hoerhager. I'm a professor here at CSU. I didn't have the pleasure and honor of having you in my classes, but I am happy to see you here because this is always an inspiration. Can you hear me and see me well?
I'm getting you on and off a little bit, but I get the gist of most of what you're saying.
Okay. Well, I'm the one who is with the most unstable connection. Luckily, everybody else will have no difficulty seeing you because I am calling from Europe, and every now and then the connection is just a little iffy. But the most important part is that you are here and that we are all here to listen to your stories. And this is what I would suggest. So everybody in this classroom had a chance to look at your very inspirational biographies, but still, I would like to invite you all to introduce yourselves. Tell us within the 10 minutes a little bit about you in general, then about your trajectories from the graduation till where you are now, and then we will have an interactive Q&A where students will ask you questions that interest them, because right now they're just most of them are a couple of weeks from graduation and the big unknown. All right.
I guess I will start because I'm unmuted at the moment.
Excellent.
In business administration. That was after receiving an associate's in marketing at the community college here in Fort Collins. I guess I was in marketing a little bit before I went to school. I and graduated at the age of 28, so I did a little bit later than normal. But it piqued my interest, and so I started looking at postings, and people wanted, obviously marketing or business experience, but communications kept jumping up. And so I took a digital path in communications, kind of studied and learned more about figuring out interact with that, since that's what marketing is. And I have spent the past 5 or 6 years really trying to define my place in that sector, and where I am the sole marketer, and it's just a lot of great opportunity and upward trajectory there. So as the marketing department, education, I'm a graphic designer now. I do video and photo and multiple other facets of marketing just as business needs arise. So that has been where I've been for the past 5 years.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you. We will reserve the rights to ask more questions once everybody has a chance to speak. And just in case the connection gets a little tricky, we will also be using chat function so that you could see the questions if we get interrupted. Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So my name is Erin Yates. I am probably the longest graduate among us. I graduated in 2011. My degree was in communications as well, with a minor in business administration. I grew up in Fort Collins as well, so it was kind of an easy transition for me over to CSU to complete my undergraduate studies. Upon graduation, I kind of tried out politics for a little bit. That wasn't really for me. It was a lot. It was just. It wasn't a good fit. I felt like a lot of emotional stress, too much all the time. So I actually was did a little bit of preschool teaching for a little bit. That also wasn't for me. I realized, teaching kids wasn't my thing. Maybe I was better fit to just have kids later on in life. So I was actually working in retail at the time. And one of my managers there after I graduated, she was working at a company called Stars Entertainment. So Stars, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's similar to HBO. It's a premium, or what used to be a movie channel. On all cable networks. Now, obviously, everything is primarily OTT or over the top, streaming and subscription services. But I was able to, talk to her. She offered me an entry-level position as just kind of a temporary floater there. So I filled in when anybody was gone or away. And so did that for a while and really honestly just worked myself up. So I started doing that. Really just never said no to anything when anybody asked me if I wanted to do something. And that position was housed in the human resources department. So I learned a lot about HR. And then I actually quickly really grew within the field. I moved it I was the manager of training and internal communication. So I managed all the training for our entire organization, both in California, in Denver, New York, and we had a couple of smaller locations, and wrote all the communication across the company. So on behalf of the company to the company. So any internal type communication that was kind of HR related. Because I had such a strong background in written communication coming out of school, that was something that they kind of flexed for me and wanted me to do there. And so then from there, I grew into, I was promoted to a senior manager of organizational development and training, did a lot of strategy, implementation, performance management, all of that, again, training. And then I was doing a lot of set training too. So we have to train our contract employees that are on sets. So any of our production crew for anti-harassment training were liable for all of that. So I did a lot of that early on. I didn't really like to travel so much. So I moved more into, we were acquired by Lionsgate Entertainment. I moved into a true HR business partner, which is really more of an HR generalist role. So did a lot of, so now I primarily focus on, all things related to HR, connecting with the business, performance management, retention, recruitment, employee relations, all of that kind of stuff. And now I am the director of human resources for Stars, and we have a really, really large office in Denver. It used to be our corporate headquarters, but our Denver office is located in South Denver, and we do all of the broadcasting from that location. So everything that you see from our channel in your home is actually broadcast from Colorado, which is really, really neat. All of our satellite dishes are located there. We do all of our post-production and pre-production editing there. All of our shoots and things take place typically in LA and New York or overseas, but everything is then edited here in Colorado and then streamed up to the satellites. So, and I live in Denver, outside of Denver, but that's me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's wait. I already have too many, but this is a time where I police myself because it's always so cool to see how many avenues can develop from our awesome major. Thank you. Ashley, are you with us?
Yes, sorry. It's I'm actually David. My apologies. I can't get my change.
No worries.
What was the question? My apologies.
No, we just wanted to hear from you.
Oh, Hi, what do you want to hear about?
Good, good. No, no, just it's all good. Wait. Okay. Sorry, my internet just keeps being a little tricky and kicks me out. Wait. Okay, cool. Well, for some reason, I'm not seeing our third presenter. And that's why I would like to start with a few questions for our alums. I know that right now, a lot of our capstoners are asking themselves, what am I supposed to do once all of this is over, once this semester is over and we're supposed to start kind of a brand new life, and especially right now in the middle of the pandemic where there are additional uncertainties about job market. So if there are a couple of absolutely necessary pieces of advice while you're so close to graduation, what would that be from you, from both of you?
I guess I'll start. So you mean as far as going from like graduation into your first job kind of thing? I would say that, you know, just kind of be open to really anything that comes your way. I think I always tell like interns and the like that knowing what you don't want to do is just as important as knowing what you want to do. So trying a bunch of different things and in a lot of different fields is really important. Also, I think that kind of knowing what it is that you want to do is not necessarily tied to the industry you want to be in. So for instance, what I do, you know, I can do human resources in any different, you know, company, any different industry, which is really nice. So, you know, thinking about that, like, is there a specific industry that you want to be in, that you want to get into, and then, you know, what are the jobs available there, or is there a specific type of job and you don't really, you know, matter the industry? And then I would always say also, once you get into that first job, you know, take on as much as you can. You know, my biggest thing is I never said no to anything, and it afforded me a lot. You know, it was stressful at first, but I took on and learned as much as I could, so I could figure out what it was that I liked doing, I enjoyed doing, what I was good at. And it also showed people that I was a valuable asset to the organization and allowed me to kind of grow my career there for a really long time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And also everybody, I kindly ask you to please use chat so that we have no problems with the internet kicking us out and kind of breaking up. So I just invited you to do that, and thank you very much. And Travis, do you have anything to add to this? I don't know what's... Can you still hear us? Can you still see everyone?
I can still hear you all.
Good, because I would like you to remember that this is your chance to see what you can do with your major. What are the unexpected things that might happen while you're on the job market? So that's your super cool chance to actually talk to people who have been through what you will be through, what you will be facing very soon. So I would kindly invite you to use this chance.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I am curious. I want to know how much more difficult it would be for someone to enter the job market um, a year after graduation, because I'm planning on going abroad for like a year. I mean, trying to get into the job market then. But I'm worried that it'll be more difficult because, you know, usually jobs hire off of like right out of graduation, or I'm not even sure if that's like an actual thing, but how beneficial would an experience abroad be to coming into the job market after that, after a year?
So from like an HR standpoint, from a recruitment standpoint, you know, I honestly don't think that there's a big difference. You know, I think that there's, you know, going from college and moving into your job, you know, what you look like from a personnel perspective, right, is that there's no gaps in employment, right? You're always hearing about that. That's really kind of later on, right? So if you're going to college, you're going to go abroad, you're going to do that. That's a perfectly acceptable reason for not having employment in between that time. Plus, I also feel like, you know, I'll take myself included, you know, I graduated, I did some volunteer work. Like I said, I did some, you know, work at a preschool. You know, I didn't move straight into my career right after graduation. And also, I think as, you know, as you're kind of growing and developing in your career too, you also, you know, a lot of companies aren't necessarily going to have a lot of entry level positions, right? I feel like sometimes you'll get lucky. You know, I got really lucky and I got an entry level and was able to grow at the same place. But oftentimes you're going to bounce around a little bit there at the beginning. So really finding something that's a good fit, that's for an experiential purpose, you know, after graduation, a year after graduation, you know, doing that is really, really important. And then seeing kind of what you need to do moving forward. But I would say, you know, go do what you want to do, you know, afterwards. I don't think that there are companies that are specifically looking for immediate college graduates. A year later is still, you're still fresh out of college, you know, you're still entering the job, plus you're, you know, going off and gaining more experience and doing anything. I definitely don't think that should deter you from, you know, jumping right in and trying to get hired somewhere immediately after graduation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I have a question. Other than expressing a willingness to learn, what would you recommend for speaking to skills you might not feel you have yet? I don't know if it's maybe imposter syndrome, but I know a lot of jobs I'm applying for, there's a few things where I'm like, I definitely know I could, you know, do the learning curve of that, but I don't have that skill right now.
Yeah, I don't know if Travis wants to say something too, but so a lot of times when I interview for positions and I see, you know, gaps, again, you know, this is going to be your first job, you know, you're not going to have extensive experience in different areas, but be honest about it, you know, say that, you know, hey, you know, I may be lacking in this area, but I have these skills over here, or, you know, try and, you know, really, I am always a big proponent of being an advocate for yourself, right? So whether that's immediately, right, when you're getting your first job, or later on when you're, you know, trying to get a raise or a promotion, you know, you have to advocate for yourself, right? And so you know what you're good at, you know what your shortcomings are. Don't over explain your shortcomings. Just say, you know, I'm a quick learner. I have this experience that really ties into this, so it'll be easy for me to really pick up the things that, you know, you are asking of me to do, all of that. Again, you know, like I had just said, it's really hard. I think your first job out of college is not necessarily, you know, it's not going to be that perfect fit, right? You know, somebody is going to make an accommodation for you in your life. You're not ever going to have everything. And I don't think typically we ever find perfect candidates for a role, you know. I personally always hire best fit on who's a better culture fit for my team and for my organization, right? So show up with a positive attitude, you know, with a willingness and a drive to learn about things. I am more apt to teach people skills that they need versus trying to teach people, you know, a certain personality trait. You know, I can't teach people how to be pleasant or nice or a team player, but I can teach you, you know, a little bit about employment law. I can teach you how to use our internal systems. I can, you know, I can teach those things and I can help you with that. So I think, you know, personality and how you kind of show up in your interview or present yourself is always number one for me.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Perfect. I figured out the audio. Yeah, I agree with everything Erin said. As someone who grew into my position, you know, I started as a copywriter and developed skills from there, but it was never about skills I didn't have. It was always opportunities for growth, and how I could attack those. So even in my interview for my latest position, you know, I told them there's obviously a skills gap in the market with graphic design, and I'm going back to do this. I didn't ask them to pay for it. I didn't ask them to do anything special to facilitate. I said, I'm doing this so I personally can grow, which shows that there is, you know, there's a strong drive to better myself personally and professionally. So I think ultimately, as you're going in, one, research the company just down to the bones, so you know kind of what their culture is and what they may expect from you. And then two, as you're sitting there and you're talking about yourself, really embrace opportunities to grow. Don't think of them about shortcomings or missteps, things you should have done in your past. Most companies will really grab onto that and really, kind of like Erin said, they're willing to develop you and build skills for you if you can show a desire to obtain the skills and grow as a professional.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And dear ones, there are also quite a few questions in the chat. If you could also address those. There are a few questions about the actual choices between different jobs. Can you access chat, please?
Yes.
Cool.
So I see one that says, Erin, I was wondering if you could give an example of a task that you said yes to that surprised you. Thanks. So when I first started at Stars, I was, like I said, I was what they called a floater. So basically what I was an on-call temporary floater. So the most part-time position you could probably get. So I would, you know, get a call from my boss and she would say, you know, so-and-so is out for 2 weeks. I need you to cover their desk, right? So I would flex and, you know, I would show up and I would answer phones and schedule meetings for one of the executives. And so during that time, you know, I was getting a lot of projects, right? So I, you know, there was things I was there, right? But I had, you know, a lot of free time if I wasn't scheduling meetings or doing stuff like that. And so I was given projects to, you know, do some quality control. So I had to go on and make sure like all of our titles were showing correctly. This is back when we were just showing stuff on our browser, make sure all our titles were. So I always said yes. I said yes to that project. That was something I had never done before. I had never done quality control before, but I learned about that and I was like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. I didn't know we did that, right? Another thing was we had a recruiter that left. And so they said, hey, Erin, I know you've never done recruiting before, but hey, we'll teach you the basics of it. And then can you do some phone screens for us to help fill the gap until we get it? So I said yes to that. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Teach me, show me whatever you need to do. I did some research on my own, figured it out. And so all of these things that I continued to say yes to taught me not only about HR, but they also taught me about the business, right? I knew nothing about Stars and what Stars did and like entertainment in general, TV production, television, but knowing all this, you know, getting into understanding QC, understanding these different pieces and projects. I did a little bit in program planning and film evaluation. And saying yes to all of these things helped me understand the business, which also helps me become a better HR person, right? Now I know what everybody does that I'm supporting. And so that was huge for me. And that was a big deal. And I always give that advice. And yeah, it's gonna be hard your first little while because you're taking on a lot, but then it eventually became a joke that we would sit in a team meeting and people would be like, oh, just give it to Erin, she can do it, right? And that was a great feeling for me because I felt like I was trusted enough to get things done within the organization. And when a position, an actual full-time manager level position came up 6 months later that I wasn't necessarily completely qualified for, I had a track record of saying yes and being able to learn and catch on to things quickly, that they said, okay, we're going to give her a chance and let her do this. And I was able to really, again, grow into that position.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There is another question. Looking back, if you had to choose between two jobs within the same industry, what would be the top criteria for choosing based on what you know now?
Yeah, looking at that, and actually there was a question that just came through. Other than saying yes to opportunities, how do you find a career that feels fulfilling? I'd like to take a stab at answering those at the same time, maybe. I think there are a couple important things to remember when you are out there interviewing for job opportunities. And the first and biggest thing is to, one, know your own worth. A lot of jobs, they have this preset idea of what they want to pay a position, but they don't necessarily know what you've gone through to gain certain skills, knowledge, aptitudes towards whatever it is you want to do. And then the second thing is, as you're doing your interviews, remember you're interviewing the workplace, the company, just as much as they're interviewing you. So go in, having done your homework by looking at their website, looking at their social media, understanding who they are, and have questions of your own that you can fire back about things like their culture, about kind of the average day in the life of your position, who you would be, the shoes you're trying to fill, who came before you, and maybe if they're willing to disclose a little bit as to why that position came available in the first place. And that'll tell you a lot about, if you're choosing between two jobs, maybe which one might be a better opportunity for you. Look at future growth. Part of the reason I took the job that I have now is because they're starting with me as one marketing person, and this thing can blow up into an entire marketing department that I can lead. So there's a lot of opportunity for me to kind of plant a flag and grow as a marketer and grow as a leader and develop my skills and become more than just a guy who sits behind a computer doing, copywriting and graphic design. And that really built into kind of how I can be fulfilled at my job as well, because I want long-term growth and long-term opportunity. I'm not the type personally who wants to find that next tier in positioning by going to another company. If I can kind of stick it out where I'm at, then that is my goal. So ultimately, I think those are really big things when choosing between your jobs. Know your worth and what the company is willing to offer you for all of your skills, your knowledge, everything that you've built to get to where you are. But know the company and interview them right back, just to know that you're going to fit day one when you walk in the door as much as humanly possible.
And this is a very valuable piece of advice. Thank you very much for this, because can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I was just going to say that it's an incredibly valuable piece of advice, especially for people who are going to be in the job market for the first time in their lives, because very often there is a lot of insecurity, and a lot of young people think that they absolutely need to take the kind of the very first opportunity and I'll do whatever they tell me to do, because it's kind of it's natural feeling of feeling insecure and thinking I don't have enough skills, and especially I don't have enough experience. But doing your homework and learning as much as you can about the company and also the fit is also a huge favor you can do to yourself. Very cool. How important is it, judging on the next question, how important is it to stay the same job for, what is it? Is it truly crucial to stay at your first job for 2 years, even if you find a better opportunity?
I think from, again, just kind of from a hiring perspective and kind of what you look at, I think your first job, kind of what I said, your first jobs are going to be trying to gain experience, right? And you're trying to kind of find what it is that you want to do. What you don't want to become is kind of a habitual job jumper, right? So where you are, over when you're looking at your resume and over the course of 10 years, every 2 years you're leaving a job, right? Because immediately as a hiring manager, I'm going to look at that and say, okay, I'm going to hire this person, but they're going to leave me in 2 years. So if I have the choice between that and then I have another candidate that is similarly qualified, but they've been at their previous position, for 5 to 7 years, I'm probably going to choose that person because they have seemingly have a more committed relationship to their jobs, right? So I don't think so again, I don't think that your first job, it's critical to do that. I mean, I think that you are trying to find what works for you, right? And so if within the first 2 years or year, you find another opportunity that's a better fit for you, and you're really not loving what you're doing, you may not be, what kind of Travis was saying too, maybe you don't feel like what they offered you was exactly what you were worth, you didn't feel comfortable negotiating, whatever it may be, maybe there's better benefits at this other place, I don't know. I think it's perfectly acceptable to move and go on to somewhere else as well. If you find a better opportunity, just don't make it a habit, right? As you move through your career, because that's what will start becoming a red flag for hiring managers.
Totally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is another question here. How important is an internship?
It depends on the position. I've never had an internship. Personally, I took a temporary contract. I actually worked for the Environmental Center at the university. It's connected to the College of Natural Resources. But I took it thinking that it would potentially become a long-term opportunity for me. And it just didn't work out like that. So outside of that, I've never had what you would call an internship or a temporary contract or anything like that. I think there's a lot of good skills that can be gained by internship. And maybe from an HR perspective, maybe it's different, so I'll defer to Aaron on that. But ultimately, I've never done it, and most of my colleagues never had any kind of internship that they can speak to. So.
I would agree. I think it's kind of, it is the first thing that Travis said, which is it's dependent on the job, right? Certain jobs, they look for that. And other jobs, it's not necessarily as important. I have managed, so I've been with STARS for almost 9 years now. And for the first 6 years that I was there, I managed our internship program. And so what I'll say about that is I do think internships are a great way for experience, right? And I think also what they tend to do is they give you a little bit of a leg up in terms of if and only if you take an internship in an area that you then want to turn into a career, right? So for instance, you do a finance and accounting internship, right? And then you want to move into finance and accounting for your long-term career. So that they're going to see as, oh, you already have experience, real world applicable experience. You've worked in an office setting before. That's great. We're going to take that and see that as a little bit of experience to move over, right? So that's where I think that you're going to see the importance of an internship, is it shows your employer in your first roles, right? I think later on, it's not going to be as important. But in your first roles, as long as it is along the same lines as what you're looking to do moving forward, then I think it's important. I did a lot of different internships. I did a PR internship. I worked for a nonprofit. I did a couple of different things. When I was interning, none of that was applicable to what I ended up doing later on, right? So for me, on a personal basis, the internship wasn't valuable. I think now it's really hard to get internships. You know, I think that they're just offered less and less. The programs are, you know, kind of harder from a management standpoint. You know, we're doing less internships because our business is, you know, we're so busy, you know, so companies in and of themselves are changing. And I think it's going to be, you know, they're competitive to get into these areas. So I don't necessarily think that it's like you have to have an internship, but if you know what you want to do later on and you can find an internship that's going to give you some real world experience prior to, do it by all means. I think it's a great idea. You can find little ones, you know, in the summer or over breaks or whatever you need to do. Even postgraduate internships may be a good thing to look into while you're actually looking for a full-time position too. But that's kind of just my 2 cents on internships also.
Thank you very much. And again, it's always a different story with internships. I've heard also the most kind of discouraging things and the most encouraging things. Some internships are paid, some are unpaid, some might turn into part-time jobs, some might be absolutely irrelevant for the jobs you take, but at least it's experience. Another question your way, other than saying yes to opportunities, how did you find a career that feels fulfilling?
I'll let Travis say something too, but I mean, for me, it was, I think it's really specific to the person, right? I mean, I think you have to, I love what I do, and it is not ever something I thought that I would be doing. I didn't even think about HR when I was in your position. I thought I was going to do something like I was going to be fancy and PR, and I was going to be, you know, all of that. And I ended up trying a couple of different things, and I didn't really care for it as much. And again, I just sort of fell into it, and I thought it was an amazing opportunity. And so every day I think to myself, do I really like my job? Do I like what I'm doing? And a large part of it is, do you like the organization? You know, again, I think Travis had said it earlier, is, you know, you need to read about the company that you're going into, the industry that you're doing. Do you feel like you fit and connect with that organization? Because that's going to make your job that much more fulfilling. Because if you like what you do, like who you work with and who you work for with the company, and you resonate with their values and their cultural stance, then it is going to make your day-to-day just that much better.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
This is my daughter, everybody. She's decided to join us. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like I said in my introduction, I took a little unconventional path, and, you know, I thought I was going to be a career in the military. And I kind of fell into marketing at first and learned that I really enjoyed it. So when I went to school, I actually, you know, tailored my education very specifically towards doing what I do now. Because I kind of figured out that's where I wanted to be. I think the biggest thing for me and the life experience that I personally gained was I learned just kind of looking around and being on deployments and hanging out with a bunch of other soldiers and that type thing. I saw a lot of what I didn't want to become 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road. And that really kind of drove my passion for finding something that I could fit in. Once I knew I wanted to do marketing, you know, I had that temporary contract and I had moved into another position where the position was awesome. It was exactly what I was looking for, but the culture of the company, I hadn't done my homework. And it was borderline destructive at the time. So ultimately with the position I have now, I did a deep dive into the company, and I think that's huge, is knowing where you're going, where your skills are going to take you with a company, what that company actually values in the individuals they hire. So I just cannot stress enough and come back to interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. And even if you have an opportunity to show up to an interview early, or if they have a waiting room, you can stay a little late and maybe talk to a couple of employees about, you know, about what they think of the company themselves. Because of course your interviewer is going to tell you all the great things because they potentially want you. So just make sure that the employees are on board. You know, if you get the chance to know, you know, kind of watch and see, you know, do an early morning interview, and when you show up, are people kind of strolling in right as the bell hits and it's time to get to work, you know, or schedule a later interview towards the end of the day, and notice whether people are just rushing to get out the door and get home, or are people kind of milling around and are they enjoying being at that workplace? You know, nobody wants to just hang out at work, but there's a stark difference between showing up on time and leaving on time, and thinking to yourself, yeah, I can get there a little early, say hi to my coworkers, we can hang out by the coffee machine and whatever, or yeah, it's, you know, it's quitting time and we're all going to go out after work for happy hour or whatever. So, you know, if you have an opportunity to pay attention to those things before you get hired, you may not, but if you do, that was one thing that also drew me to my company is, you know, the people like each other and they enjoy being there. And I think that kind of culture is huge for me personally.
Thank you very much. There is another question for you about stress. Do you have any strategies you use when your job becomes stressful? Thank you.
I think stress is very personalized. You know, for me and just some of the life experiences that I've had, stress is a fairly normal thing in my life. You know, even now as kind of this one marketing guy trying to grow a marketing department and add people to a team eventually and those types of things, I don't know that I can count more days of stress than not in my current career. And so it's something that I internalize in a very special way, and it drives me to do my job better. And I work really well under pressure, I think. So I think stress is very, very personalized. The big thing is to whatever it is that helps you set that aside and compartmentalize for you, find it and hold on to it. No manager, supervisor, or executive wants to hear that their employee is stressed and can't do their job as a result of feeling under the gun or feeling that pressure. I think a big thing for me is knowing that I'm the only one who does what I do at my company, so I am valuable. So if I make a little mistake, I'm not going to get fired tomorrow. But, you know, from just a standpoint of someone who's dealt with stress for the past 20 years, for me, it's just very personal. And I think I handle it very differently than anybody else I work with. And I don't know that there's really a right or a wrong way to deal with it as long as you don't let it crush you. Don't be afraid to talk about it. If you're stressed ultimately and you're just like, man, I need to sit down with a trusted coworker, sit down with your manager if you have that type of relationship and have that conversation. Absolutely. Don't let it crush you is the big thing I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There is another question about Yeah, go
Oh
ahead.
no, I
Hannah.
was just
didn't
gonna
want to
say
cut you short.
I agree with that. Again, sorry, I like have to put my HR hat on all the time. So for me, you know, our employee mental health is incredibly important. And I think if you get into an organization that also values that, we do very, very strongly. And so you want to find an organization that also values that. And so look at what they offer in terms of, you know, PTO time, any sort of employee assistance programs. We offer something called Talkspace, which is online counseling services that's paid by the company, that you're able to get free counseling services. So again, you know, when you're looking at a company, look for what they offer to you, because that really talks about what they value as an organization, and how you're able to kind of, you know, yes, you're working for them, you spend most of our time at work. Now, what is the organization going to give back to you in that sense? So you shouldn't ever feel like you can't go to your manager, that you can't go to somebody that you work with, can't go to the HR department, or somebody and say, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling stressed, whether that's work related, whether that's things outside of work. All of those things lead into, in my daily work, I get people that come to my office. I used to, now we're on video, but I get people that come to me and say, I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I need some help. I need a break. You know, I'm going through a divorce, or, you know, I have some, you know, issues going on with my kids or whatever. And that's what I'm here for. And that's what your HR department should also be, supporters of you as an employee, and wanting to look out for your mental health and well-being, and share those things with your supervisors. We provide mental health days sporadically throughout the year to help employees recharge and reset throughout the time, again, especially now, and with everything that's changed with COVID and the pandemic, this has become increasingly more important as well. So again, you know, I would just encourage you to reach out to the resources that your company has to offer, because if you don't say something, you know, something you're not going to know, and you shouldn't really internalize those things, and try and find out what resources there, because you may be surprised at what is being offered, what's available to you.
I think just to piggyback on that really quick too, what Erin was saying actually reminded me, at the beginning of COVID, we had kind of some situations working from home, and it was new for my office to really release that. And there were some stressful things, you know, and if I'm giving a tip, one of the big things that I embraced in that is not using my stress as an excuse, but using it as an opportunity to really say, okay, where can I grow as a professional here? But being straight up with my boss about it too, in that moment, because, you know, it's far better for you to see it and catch it before someone has to come to you and talk to you about it. So, you know, once I realized what was going on, I called my supervisor, and I just said, hey, here's some things that are going on. I know that's not an excuse, but just know that I've been stressed about this, and I realize that's affected my performance, and here's how I'm going to grow and move forward from this. So be very self-aware in those moments. And like Erin said, you know, my company provides some opportunities for, whether it's, you know, counseling or some sort of support to help deal with those things. Be very self-aware and be willing to embrace those things and use them and grow through your experiences with those assets available to you.
Thank you very much for addressing this, because I think, well, a lot of students, a lot of adults, everybody is going through this increased amount of stress these days, but a lot of people, especially young people who are just in the job market, they feel stigmatized because they think, oh, I shouldn't be admitting this. Weak and undesirable and too vulnerable for the job market, and it should be addressed, because right now, for example, even with this home office and online classes, a lot of things became very confusing for many people, where professional and personal got mixed, where basically working from your living rooms, you're working from your bedrooms, places that used to be kind of safe places that used to be, this is my private space, are no longer that private, and it's an additional level of stress. I'm not even talking about the anxieties that are connected to also decreasing job opportunities, temporary decreasing job opportunities connected to COVID and economic crisis everywhere. So this is a very, very important thing to remember. So thank you very much, panelists, for addressing this.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Awesome. So I wanted to know, Aaron or Travis, if you two have ever been motivated by a geographic region and wanting to be in a specific state or country, whatever it may be. And I wanted to know if you approached it in one specific way, or if you had to unfortunately let that want and yearning go. But I want to know, how would you approach that if you did want to be somewhere, geographically speaking, to work in?
This is an interesting question for me. I mean, I grew up in Colorado, and post-military, this is where I wanted to come back to, and where I wanted to be long-term. So I would say kind of along that lines, or along those lines, I speak English, I promise. Look for jobs there. I mean, that's going to be really big, are there opportunities where you want to go? And if there are opportunities where you want to go, how do you become the best fit for those opportunities, right? If there's a skills gap, how do you fill that gap? If, the company's not offering relocation services for you financially or support-wise, how are you going to overcome those challenges? So I think whether it's a state or a different country, and you really want to fill a position that's not here in Colorado, or if you're a remote learner and you want to come to Colorado, understand that one, there will be obstacles potentially, and two, you should have answers to overcoming those obstacles. When I was coming back to Colorado, it wasn't all about, well, I'm from here, I'm native, I graduated CSU, et cetera, et cetera. It was about, how can I re-enter the market in Colorado and make it as seamless for my company to bring me in as humanly possible. Because the easier you can, at least from my perspective and what I found, I'll let Aaron speak to the HR portion of this. But from my perspective, my goal when I interviewed was to be as plug and play as my skills and my experience would allow, and to make it as easy for my company to hire me, onboard me, and bring me in without creating obstacles for them employing me as possible. So I would say, if you're going to go somewhere that's not where you currently are, just know those and be very flexible in allowing the company to bring you in without creating trouble for them.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would agree. That's key, right? You don't want to, already taking on somebody that is coming from out of state. That's going to be like, oh gosh, what could possibly happen from a hiring manager perspective. So again, making it as easy as possible for them. My second thing would be is, on your resume, in your comments, whatever you can do, say, looking to relocate, make that scream loud and clear, because so I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with kind of how nowadays kind of how applications are sorted, but most companies use something called an applicant tracking system, and that system basically computerizes based on what the company wants and what their needs are. You can kind of input that in, and it pulls candidates and says, okay, this person is an 80% match, 90% match, whatever, right? So you need to, if you can kind of get to that next step, you need to make sure that anything that you can put in there that says, willing to relocate or, looking to move here, it screams loud and clear at you, because you have about a minute, if that, to really kind of pique in a recruiter's interest in terms of when they're looking through your resume and deciding, okay, is this person good enough for me to pass on to the hiring manager? Because 9 times out of 10, the hiring manager isn't doing the first pass at any of the candidates. Your recruiter is. They're saying it. And if you have a completely different state, you're in Colorado, but let's say you want to move to New York, and somebody's gonna be like, well, this person's in Colorado, we're not offering relocation, we're not offering any assistance there. They're just gonna toss them out, and they're gonna make a split decision. Make sure you put that on your resume, put that in your application somewhere, make sure that you know what for them, so that when they're taking that really quick look at it at the very beginning, that they see that right off the bat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are 2 more questions here in chat for you. How important is networking on LinkedIn?
I don't think it's very important in terms of kind of networking. I see it in 2 different ways. LinkedIn is sort of it's a gift and a curse, right? I think that there's a lot that happens on LinkedIn that shouldn't be on LinkedIn. There's a lot of advertising. There's a lot of people trying to reach out and sell you something and services. I get definitely turned off by that. I get a lot of people that reach out, trying to offer services on there and trying to sell me on something that I would have normally gotten in an email. But the flip side for LinkedIn that I think is excellent is your ability to find a job on there, right? A lot of recruiters utilize LinkedIn to find candidates for positions. I get reached out to, just from a personal perspective, I get reached out to at least once a week by a recruiter asking me if I'm interested in a position, or trying to say, hey, I have this job, would you be interested in learning more? And I don't even have my LinkedIn, you can open your LinkedIn to where it says, looking for opportunities or willing to move or whatever on there, and I don't even have mine set to that, right? So I think it's an awesome opportunity to find a job. Like I said, most recruiters utilize that as their non-direct hire source. So if you don't, and by that is if you're not applying directly for the position on a company's website, and a recruiter is kind of outsourcing for that and trying to look externally, then that's how they're reaching out to people. Recruiters are going in there. They have special access and profiles, and they can see different things about people and look for skills and look for all of that. So for one, if you're going to use it, make sure it's updated, right? So always make sure it's updated, because another thing that we'll look at is when you're applying for jobs, I always take the resume and I look at it and match it with LinkedIn. And there should be no differences, no discrepancies between the 2. So make sure that your employment history on LinkedIn is the same as it is on your resume, and all of that is cohesive. So update that, make it look as nice as possible. But don't get too personal on there. Again, I don't really, it's not a good look to make it have more of a social media feel. It's really just your professional place to be. But again, keep it updated and utilize it for what it's supposed to be. But as far as like connecting with people, I've got maybe a couple times, like someone from CSU will reach out and say, hey, I saw we're alumni together, we're connected here, I have this friend. Yeah, I'll reply to that, and I'll be interested in it and all of that. But that's not what I primarily use it for. And I see that more of just, that's a nice thing for me to do to try and help out. But I don't know how other people might use that.
Yeah, I agree with Erin. And as someone who spends a good deal of my professional time on social media, LinkedIn over the course of even the past 2 or 3 years has changed a ton. and the way people use it has absolutely transformed. So 100% agree, keep your LinkedIn as up to date as possible. If you do have it, keep it very married to what your resume and cover letter say, because I can promise you that, when you get interviewed, you will be social media stalked. Somebody will go on LinkedIn to make sure you are who you say you are. And keep it professional from the top to the bottom. I mean, that's your profile picture, that's the types of words you're using and how you are talking about yourself. And make sure that all the skills you have on there are relevant, because if you say that you're, expert level in Microsoft Excel, for instance, and then you show up at a job and they expect you to teach people about it and you're not, that could come back to bite you. So make sure it's truthful, professional, and presentable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I believe, Travis, there is one question specifically for you. So for graphic design learning, do you think that getting a traditional college degree is more helpful than paying for private online courses?
So for me personally, I did the community college. I didn't even do the full associates. Honestly, I did certification so I could cover a wide array. So I'm graphic design, multimedia management, and business for creatives, all kind of wrapped into the program I was in. And I think it's really dependent on the employer. Maybe Erin has some ideas because she does look at resumes for a living. I do not. But when I do get ready to hire a graphic designer to bring onto my team, I personally am not going to worry about whether you have a degree, private online courses. If you went to, in Fort Collins, we have a organization called the Digital Workshop Center, and they teach courses in the Adobe Suite. I'm not going to really care as much where you got the knowledge as much as I care that you can display the knowledge. A lot of places that I interviewed with who wanted my graphic design experience, once I kind of started to get it, wanted me to show that I could do it. They would ask for examples of my work in a portfolio. So have your portfolio and have that sucker up to date, ready to go. If you can provide it digitally through your own website, so it's really easy for me to go look at it and see your examples instead of having to bring things in, that'll be a plus for you. But graphic design is almost completely subjective. Just because I design it and I like it doesn't mean that anybody else on this panel or in this Zoom call is going to like it. So what I really care about as a marketer, as someone in graphic design, as someone who will be hiring a graphic designer probably in the next couple of years, is do you know how to use the programs, and can you display that and show it to me kind of just right off, ready to go. Make sure that you have a link to that on your resume as you're sending in resumes. Even add it to your LinkedIn if we're going to return to the previous question, display on your LinkedIn, you're a graphic designer, you're interested in graphic design, here's my portfolio, please look at my stuff. But ultimately where you got the knowledge, whatever, you could have no schooling in it. As long as you can design and use the Adobe Suite, that's what I care about.
I totally agree.
Thank
I think
you
the only
very
thing I would
much.
add to that is we hire a lot of creatives. In fact, we have a full graphic design department. We have motion graphics, we have print design, we have like everything, right? So we have a huge creative services department. So the only thing I will say is the creative industry, exactly what Travis said, super subjective, right? So your portfolios, all of that is incredibly important versus kind of more of our, tech team, your operations side of the business. So that side is going to lean more towards kind of that traditional education, right? Versus your creative side is really going to be more of, okay, that's cool, you learned it, I want to see it. Because again, what may work, and Travis said it exactly, which is they may like what they've created. It may work for a different company. It may not work for Stars, right? They're looking for something very specific. They need this type of artist. This is the type of design that we work in, all of that, right? So I think from that perspective, it is, making sure that you have a really solid portfolio, even a website, anything that is creative driven, just make sure that that's in a shareable format in some way, shape, or form.
I think
Thank you
too,
very
for
much. And
anybody
there is
who's
one more question.
looking, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say, for anybody looking down that creative path and thinking about graphic design, specifically Braden here, keep in mind too that as a designer, once somebody contacts you, they're contacting you because they recognize skills and talent, not necessarily because they like what you do as a designer. So be flexible. I have a very specific style of design that, if I'm freelance and I just have reign to do what I want, that I will go to almost every time. But remember, as you're applying for positions from a branding standpoint, every brand has a very unique voice that specifically speaks to the market, and it's, very specific to each company. So, the things I did in my last position, marketing wise, are not going to be anywhere close to what I do now because they're completely different industries. And had multiple conversations with people throughout my company about how they need a design to say something very specific that's outside of what I normally do as a designer. So just realize if you're contacted and someone says, hey, can you provide me an example? I want you to build this poster really quick. That's where doing your homework on a company comes back in, and be ready to build something that speaks to them as a company and not to your personal design sense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One more question for Erin. Do you have any advice for women entering a male-dominated workplace? Thank you.
That's an awesome question, and bravo for asking it. So my biggest advice, and I think I said it earlier, is you have to be an advocate for yourself. I think as women, oftentimes we don't always advocate for ourselves. You know your worth better than anybody else. You know that you are an awesome, badass lady, and you can get the work done, right? And so, sometimes, I find that, when we're in meetings or doing that, we often sit back, with our male counterparts and, kind of let them take, the lead in some meetings and so on and so forth. So my biggest suggestion, again, is always speak up for yourself and always be an advocate, right? And so always don't be afraid to use your voice in the sense of saying, hey, I can do that, or this is my opinion, and really driving what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it. And you should always be feel like you should and can share those things. And so for me, that's always been my biggest thing. My specific industry is pretty female dominated. There's not a lot of males in human resources. However, there are a lot of males in my larger company. STARS is really cool in that we have our actual business model has morphed into a female driven, and that's what our programming is. It's to serve the underserved. So all of our programming is tailored to females, minority groups, all of that, which is really, really cool. So again, leaning into that and really focusing on it and just showing up, as the best version of yourself. I think that's my biggest, that's always my biggest piece of advice, again, is be your own advocate. And if you don't ask for it, somebody else might not, right? You may not have those external people pushing for you. So you need to make sure that you're always your biggest fan and speaking up when you can or when you need to.
Thank you. What a precious piece of advice, especially now in the age of a lot of social kind of changes, hopefully positive changes, to see the value in all lives. I have to admit that our time is running out, and that's why I have only one last question to our wonderful presenters. What do you wish you knew when you were graduating? Somebody had not told you, but if you knew it, your life, your professional life would be just a little easier. So last piece of advice to our soon graduates, please.
That one's tough. I think coming out of college, and I hate to be a broken record and come back to my non-traditional journey and graduating much later than your average student. But I think ultimately coming out of college, when I was initially applying for jobs, when I was initially trying to become a young working professional, I leaned very heavily on the knowledge that I had just gotten and almost threw a lot of my experience out the door, because I had a lot of technical experience, I had a lot of life experience, and even in the communications realm, that's a big part of what I did in the military. And I went into places thinking, well, I've graduated now, I've got this degree, that's what's really important if I read this job description. And I feel like there were a lot of positions that maybe got turned off by that I didn't, or I should say I qualified for, but I didn't necessarily get to walk into. So, your degree is absolutely important. We want to see, when I start hiring, I want to see that you are willing to go to a university and stick it out, that you have relevant knowledge and that your classes have led you into something that absolutely will benefit me as your employer and the company as a whole. But don't discard some of the hardships you've gone through in that. Don't discard, maybe you were just a server at a restaurant. Maybe you just worked at a movie theater, but there is valuable life experience in that can help you moving forward. So don't just discard that, and don't think that it's irrelevant, especially in a degree that's very widespread. I mean, we have HR, we have marketing here on the phone. I know communications studies graduates who have gone on to do things that have nothing to do with HR or marketing. Because it's so widespread, your experience is going to be just as important as your degree. So learn how to communicate your experience, learn how to communicate it well, and learn how to make it very relevant to whatever it is you're trying to venture into.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Erin, do you have anything to add to this before we let you go?
Not really. I mean, my only thing is the one thing I wish I had known, and I agree with everything that Travis had said, is the one thing that I wish I had known is that it was going to be harder than I thought, right? I thought that getting my degree was going to just allow me to get an interview everywhere, and I was going to get hundreds of interviews, and I was going to be, given a position right away. I didn't realize that was not the case, that I rarely got asked for an interview, all of that. And so I think and I'm not saying that's I'm not trying to make everybody feel disappointed or, just upset about that, but really mostly just to say that that's okay and that's normal, right? And that you're not going to have that. You're going to have to work a little bit harder to get that interview, to get that job, to find somebody that, I wouldn't have gotten my job had I not known somebody. I was working in a store that got me somewhere else, right? And so really reaching out to those people that that are in certain areas, people that you've met before, getting, informational interviews. Informational interviews, I think, are one of those things that are kind of a little underrated. People love talking about themselves. So giving somebody an opportunity to do that and just saying, hey, I would really love to learn more about what you do. Would you have time for a coffee when we can, or a Zoom meeting? Can we just kind of connect with you? And because you don't know who that person knows, right? And they may know, they may have just a friend, their buddy that works, at Comcast is hiring for, this or whatever, right? And so I think those are the opportunities those informal opportunities to take advantage of. And like I said, I wouldn't have gotten where my position had I not been working in the mall at the Cherry Creek Mall. And you know, my supervisor just so happened that there happened to be a human resources manager at Stars. And so again, you know, I would definitely say, you know, try that, you know, reach out to people that you've met, that you've connected with, and because you could be surprised at how you kind of can network into a place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is officially up. That's why students are rushing to other classes. It was such a delight having you on board. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being inspirational, because this is what we really, really, really need, especially now in these uncertain times. Thank you.
Thanks for your time and sharing your stories. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.